The children were singing. 73 first and second graders from Collinwood Elementary School in Cleveland, Ohio, crammed into a wooden rail car, voices bright with excitement about the school trip ahead. It was March 4th, 1908, 8:47 a.m. The Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railway conductor checked his watch, confirmed the departure time, and gave the signal to move. 4 minutes later, 21 of those children were dead, and the way America built and regulated passenger trains would never be the same. The accident that killed them wasn't dramatic. No derailment, no collision, so bridge collapse. The tragedy was mundane in its mechanism and horrifying in its outcome. A wooden passenger car caught fire while moving at normal speed on a routine morning commute, and the people inside discovered that every exit was either locked, jammed, or blocked. By the time rescuers broke through, the fire had consumed the car's interior. The children who died weren't killed by smoke inhalation quickly. They died trapped, screaming, while adults on the platform watched helplessly through windows they couldn't break. The Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railway operated a commuter route between Cleveland and suburban communities. On March 4, 1908, Collinwood Elementary chartered a special train to take students and teachers to a museum in downtown Cleveland. The school packed 73 children, ages 6 to 8, plus 6 teachers and several parent chaperones, into a single wooden passenger car coupled to a standard locomotive. The car was typical of the era: wooden frame construction, wooden interior paneling, oil lamps for lighting, a coal stove for heating, and windows that didn't open wide enough for an adult to escape through. The fire started approximately 4 minutes after departure. Later investigation determined the cause was a malfunctioning coal stove, though some witnesses reported seeing flames near electrical wiring first. The exact ignition point became irrelevant once the fire took hold. Wooden passenger cars burned fast. Interior paneling, seats, and ceiling materials were all combustible. The varnish railroads used to finish wood surfaces was essentially liquid fuel. Once ignited, a wooden passenger car could become fully engulfed in under 10 minutes. The conductor felt heat through the car floor and ordered an emergency stop. The train was approximately 2 miles from Collinwood Station when it halted. Passengers initially remained calm. Small fires on trains weren't uncommon, and standard procedure was to evacuate quickly while crew extinguished the flames. What happened next revealed design failures that had been ignored for decades because they'd never killed enough people at once to force change. The car had 4 exits, 2 doors at each end of the car. All 4 doors opened inward, meaning passengers had to pull them toward themselves to exit. As smoke filled the interior and panic set in, passengers instinctively pushed toward the doors rather than pulling them open. Bodies piled against the exits, creating human barricades that prevented the doors from functioning. Adults trying to evacuate children couldn't maintain the presence of mind to step back, pull the door inward, then exit. The crush of panicking people made rational action impossible. The windows were another failure point. Passenger car windows in 1908 opened approximately 6 inches, enough for ventilation, but not enough for escape. The glass was thick and difficult to break. Several adults tried smashing windows with whatever they could find, but the small opening size meant even if glass broke, children couldn't be pushed through quickly enough. The conductor and engineer ran to the burning car with fire extinguishers. Their equipment was adequate for small mechanical fires, but completely insufficient for a wooden structure engulfed in flames. They managed to force open 1 door from the outside, allowing some passengers near that exit to escape. By that point, smoke had filled the car's interior. Most occupants were disoriented, crawling on the floor, unable to find exits. Rescuers arrived from Collinwood within minutes. The train was close enough that smoke was visible from town. Volunteers brought axes, crowbars, anything that might break through wood or glass. They smashed windows and chopped through walls, pulling survivors out through holes they created. The rescue became recovery when firefighters finally extinguished the blaze and found the bodies of 21 children clustered near the exits they couldn't open. The public response was immediate and furious. Newspapers published photographs of the burned car, the charred seats, the jammed doors. Parents whose children survived described hearing their screams from outside the train while being unable to reach them. The Cleveland community demanded answers. How could a routine school trip end with children burning to death in a train that was standing still, surrounded by people trying desperately to save them? The investigation revealed what railroad engineers had known for years but hadn't prioritized. Wooden passenger cars were death traps in fires, and current safety standards were based on preventing accidents rather than protecting passengers when accidents occurred. Door design optimized for preventing unauthorized entry rather than emergency evacuation. Window size prioritized structural integrity and weatherproofing over escape routes. Fire suppression equipment focused on protecting railroad property rather than passenger survival. The Collinwood disaster wasn't the first passenger car fire. It wasn't even the deadliest. An 1876 accident in Ashtabula, Ohio, killed 92 people when a train derailed and caught fire. But those victims died in a collision-induced fire where rescue was impossible. The Collinwood children died in a stationary car with rescuers standing outside. The distinction mattered. Americans could accept that derailments and collisions sometimes caused deaths. They couldn't accept that passengers could burn to death while the train sat motionless on the tracks. Railroad companies initially defended their safety protocols. They pointed out that wooden cars were lighter and cheaper than steel alternatives, that fire-related fatalities were statistically rare, that steel cars would require complete infrastructure replacement at enormous cost. The argument found little public sympathy. Parents didn't care about cost-benefit analyses when the benefit being analyzed was whether their children would burn to death on school trips. State legislatures began passing laws requiring specific safety features in passenger cars. Ohio mandated doors that opened outward. Michigan required windows large enough for adult escape. Pennsylvania specified fire-resistant interior materials. Each state created slightly different regulations, forcing railroads operating across state lines to maintain different car types for different jurisdictions. The patchwork approach was inefficient and incomplete, but it demonstrated that public pressure could force regulatory change that industry resistance had blocked. The federal response took longer. The Interstate Commerce Commission had authority over railroad operations, but historically avoided mandating specific equipment standards, preferring to let market forces and state regulations drive safety improvements. The Collinwood disaster, combined with growing progressive-era sentiment that government should actively protect citizens from industrial hazards, shifted that calculus. In 1910, Congress passed legislation requiring the ICC to establish comprehensive safety standards for passenger equipment. The regulations that emerged over the next several years mandated outward opening doors, larger windows, fire-resistant interior materials, improved emergency lighting, and better fire suppression equipment. More significantly, the ICC began phasing out wooden passenger cars entirely, requiring railroads to replace them with steel construction within defined timelines. The transition from wooden to steel passenger cars was expensive and disruptive. Steel cars cost roughly twice as much as wooden ones. They were heavier, requiring stronger locomotives and reinforced track infrastructure. Smaller railroads argued the mandate would drive them into bankruptcy. The ICC remained firm. Passenger safety outweighed operational convenience and profit margins. By 1920, wooden passenger cars on major routes had largely disappeared. Steel construction became industry standard. The change eliminated most fire deaths from non-collision incidents. Passengers in steel cars survived accidents that would have killed them in wooden ones. The safety improvements came at enormous financial cost, but they represented a fundamental shift in how America approached transportation regulation. Passenger safety became a requirement rather than a suggestion. The Collinwood disaster's legacy extended beyond railroad safety. It demonstrated that public outrage over preventable deaths could overcome industry resistance to costly safety measures. It established precedent that federal government could mandate specific equipment standards rather than just general operating rules. It showed that tragic incidents affecting children created political pressure that rational cost-benefit arguments couldn't counter. The families of the children who died received minimal compensation. Railroad liability laws in 1908 were limited, and courts generally favored corporate defendants. The survivors carried psychological scars. Several teachers who survived never returned to teaching. The conductor, who blamed himself for not recognizing the fire danger sooner, left railroad work entirely. The burned passenger car was eventually scrapped. The Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railway, which merged into the New York Central system, installed steel cars on the Collinwood route. The school continued operating, though enrollment dropped as families moved away to escape memories of the tragedy. Collinwood Elementary eventually closed, replaced by newer schools in different locations. What remained was the precedent. When passenger safety and railroad economics conflicted, passenger safety could win if the deaths were visible enough, tragic enough, and preventable enough. The children who died in that fire didn't save future passengers through any action of their own. They died because safety systems failed, but their deaths created political conditions that forced changes the railroad industry had resisted for decades.